Hi, I'm Eddie Muller here at the Grand Lake Theater in Oakland, California. Thanks for joining me for this Memorial Day edition of Noir Alley. Today's movie takes a hard look at the trauma soldiers fortunate enough to survive a war can still bring home with them. But it's not a prestigious star-studded classic like The Best Years of Our Lives. It's darker, harsher, and more horrifying. From an unlikely source, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, it's Act of Violence. Released in 1949, it's one of the first post-war Hollywood movies to dispense entirely with jingoism and morale boosting, to instead explore the deep and irreversible scars combat and captivity can leave on men. Now, if that sounds awfully heavy, it is. But don't let my description put you off. This film is one of the very best noirs produced during the movement's peak, and that it was made at MGM, a studio typically averse to gritty crime dramas, well, that only proves how pervasive the black tide of noir was at the time. The film's failure at the box office, however, seemed to indicate the American public wasn't yet ready for a tough-minded exploration of how the good war could still warp the character of otherwise decent, valiant men. To me, Act of Violence is noir at its finest. A seemingly simple suspense story that manages to confront such timeless issues as courage, cowardice, and the situational ethics required to survive the organized lunacy of war. Beyond that, it offers an insightful take on America's post-war suburban development, specifically the building boom in the greater Los Angeles area. The use of actual locations makes this film an amazing time capsule of mid-century LA, from the Angel's Flight Railway climbing downtown's Bunker Hill to Big Bear Lake in the San Bernardino National Forest, and lots of evocative locations in between. On its surface, Act of Violence plays like an early stalker movie, with the great Robert Ryan portraying a mysterious trench-coated Terminator out to kill a revered war hero played by Van Heflin. But there's a surplus of guilt and dread roiling beneath the surface, and that's a credit to its writers, Collier Young, who wrote the original story, Robert L. Richards, who drafted the final screenplay, and James Gunn, who contributed uncredited revisions while the film was in production. Several scenes I consider among the best written in the entire noir genre. Viennese emigre Fred Zinnemann, who'd go on to a fantastic career as a top-line director, said that this was the first film in which he had total control of the medium. After coming to America in the late 1930s, Zinnemann spent a number of years under contract to MGM, making what he considered frivolous B films, including 1942's sort of noir Kid Glove Killer, starring Marcia Hunt and Van Heflin. In an odd twist of fate, Zinnemann's fortunes as a director improved precisely at the time he finally learned in 1948 that both his parents had died in Nazi concentration camps. His next 4 films, The Search, Act of Violence, The Men, and Teresa, all revolve around characters suffering profound trauma caused by the Second World War. Zinnemann's passion for high-minded material, as well as his skill at drawing great performances from his casts, quickly elevated him to the highest ranks of Hollywood directors, where he crafted classics in a variety of genres, among them From Here to Eternity, Oklahoma, The Sundowners, and A Man for All Seasons. This may be the only film noir on Fred Zinnemann's resume, but he really didn't need to make another. Act of Violence nails the bullseye. Of course, it helped that Zinnemann was working with extraordinary talents like cinematographer Robert Surtees, actors the caliber of Heflin and Ryan, and an amazing supporting cast. A very young Janet Leigh, she's only 22 here, is brilliant in one of her earliest performances, stalwart and vulnerable in equal measure. But to me, the standout is Mary Astor, playing at 42 years of age, a worn and weary prostitute named simply Pat. Astor relished the role. Although it's smaller than her usual starring turns, it's one of the most vivid performances of her career. Released in 1949, perhaps a few years ahead of its time, this is Act of Violence.